Ross, you got a coffee ready?
I have a sugarless Pepsi ready.
It's
too hot here for coffee. I gotta get something cool.
Yeah, it's so hot. We're missing AWOL today. I guess we're gonna fly this with a duo when we're back to Zoom, unfortunately, but we'll play this Restream ad.
This podcast is sponsored by Restream. Why live stream to one platform when you can simultaneously live stream to every platform to discover new audiences faster using Restream.io?
Your daily drop today in gaming, live streaming, and social media is the rise of gaming on Twitter. What's causing it? How can you use it to your advantage? We are going to talk about that today. We've got a steamy little report that we're going to bring up. Do we not, Andrew Perrin?
Steamy. I like that. I like that.
Steamy, yeah.
Here we go. So Twitter released this earlier this month. They say insights. Twitter does not really divulge much actual numbers when they do things like this, I guess. They start out with like the only numbers they really release here, which is a 71% year-over-year growth in conversation volume and a 46% year-over-year increase in unique authors. But they say around a billion tweets about gaming in 6 months. And they show all these data points, and they only label two of them. One of them being Animal Crossing, and the other one being a PS5 showcase. There's a bunch of other notable events that happen within gaming that they don't really show on here. And I believe this only goes to June of 2020, so they're missing some huge events like, you know, the Dr. Disrespect thing, the Ninja thing, like so many other
Xbox
things.
Game showcase, yeah.
Exactly. And they're also missing what, Halo, the whole Halo thing. There's so much that they're missing here. But it shows you how the showcases have impacted volume and how coronavirus has really impacted volume as well. And they go on to say that. And they do list like the top countries, which are Japan and the US. No surprise, they're two huge gaming nations. South Korea, Brazil in there as well. What's your take on this, Ross? Like, you know, we're talking about the rise of gaming on Twitter. Is this just because of COVID-19? Is this something that's like here to stay? This type of like event programming? Why is the conversation increased as compared to like last year?
You know, I think COVID has to have played a role in this. Now, whether or not it sticks, I think could be a whole different question. I think it will. Maybe not quite at this level in a couple of years when everything is hopefully just back to normal. But Twitter, the conversation around Twitter, around gaming on Twitter, it's always been there. It's always been the best platform, honestly. I even like using that besides going to websites like GameSpot or IGN and stuff to get news when there are so many people in the gaming industry just completely just tweeting and dedicating their lives to tweeting about gaming on Twitter. It's a great platform to get involved in conversations. It's a great platform to make connections. It's even a great network or great platform to promote your own live streaming. So it's there's I don't really know what else to say about it other than, but I'm actually surprised here looking at this. I actually figured that the United States would not be number 2 on this list. But another thing I did notice that it's also important, and we'll get to this in a second, that the games that are being looked upon here, like the top games that are being talked about on Twitter, most of them are international games. A lot of them are not the major English speaking games. So that just goes to show you how wide of a variety Twitter actually is when it's talking about gaming, because, you know, from my perspective and maybe yours too, like when I get on there, all I see is stuff like The Last of Us Part 2, Halo Infinite. And I mean, I understand that this study didn't necessarily cover the Xbox showcase, but at the same time, like, none of these games are the most talked about, even top 10 on Twitter. So it just shows you that how deep that rabbit hole actually goes on Twitter and gaming. And it's something that if you're a gaming live streamer, or if you're even just someone who wants to keep up with what's happening in gaming, you need to be on Twitter. You need to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, let's switch back over here real quick. So talking about the top games, I mean, this, like I said, this report was from January to June. And so Animal Crossing was the number 1. And like, I feel like that was so long ago at this point, Animal Crossing. But I would think back, looking at the different games, Final Fantasy, because the remake had just come out.
I'm shocked Final Fantasy's on there.
I mean,
never seen anybody talk about it.
that one lasted a long time. But remember, everyone talked about that because the ending. Everyone was so. In this year specifically, I feel like there's been so many big events. The games have given us something to talk about. The creators have given us something to talk about. The industry has given us something to talk about. And it's kind of, I think it's been a nice kind of reprieve from all of the other stuff going on. Like we're stuck inside. And this is definitely pulling from more of a lockdown period. We were in lockdown for a good portion of this, at least in the United States, when they pulled this data. You know, it's nice to be able to resort to our gaming content creators for entertainment, discussion, socialization. And it shows something I think we haven't seen before. And that I think a lot of outsiders would look at gaming content creators as like, you know, I think, and I've had this actually happen to me in public before. You get looked at as like, why are you doing a career that is pointless? It doesn't help anybody, which is not true whatsoever. And I think this kind of proves it. When push comes to shove, when you need socialization and you can't find it outside, you can't get it outside, or you want entertainment, or you want a better connection with your entertainer, there's a lot to be offered here. And that's why the conversation has increased. There's also a couple other significant events. So there was a lot of speaking out in the gaming industry by women who had been in, and there still is, and there was a lot of that going on, a lot of accusations, both true and not, of abuse and things like that in the industry, and the industry basically cleaning up its act. And it needed to, like the gaming industry really needed to do this. So there was a large conversation around that. It's still ongoing, which is great. So we had that. We had Ninja making money moves. We had Mixer's fallout. Like there's been so many events because those are the events that we're paying attention to right now and that we kind of need because we aren't getting as many in real life events that we can pay attention to. You know, sports were kind of gone for most of this period of time. So what do? Well, esports are still going. So let's talk about esports. In fact, if we look on here, esports was number 2 on the gaming related topics. You know, gaming being number 1, we're obviously Twitter, we get that. So realistically, esports is number 1. And this makes total sense to me because you can't go to a baseball game. Like that's like the thing you do in the summer. You go to a baseball game, you know, grab a hot dog, hang out in some nice weather, hopefully get some fireworks. We can't really do that, right? So we're relying on our esports for entertainment because they are still able to function in this environment. And so they became number 1 in terms of a gaming related topic, Animal Crossing, and then the different games being up there. Also, another event I haven't really hit on specifically, but the consoles, the next-gen console announcements, the next-gen console ramping up the promotion and the marketing for that, then the buzz and the excitement. This is why PlayStation, notice Xbox, interesting, PlayStation number 5, Xbox number 8. I think by this time, Xbox hadn't done their showcase yet, I don't think.
It doesn't look like it, but they've mentioned that it doesn't look like in this study in particular it did, but they did do a Xbox game showcase, the most tweeted about games from that showcase.
Yeah,
but it doesn't look like that's actually part of the overall study here. Which, by the way, it was obviously Halo Infinite number 1, Fable number 2, and State of Decay 3 is number 3. So no real surprises coming from there.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of, well, here's the conferences. Here's what I was kind of looking for. Yeah, actually the Xbox showcase was on here. It was number 3, most tweeted about conference. PS5 was number 1, and I guess I did get the Xbox showcase in here. PAX East, which didn't actually happen as an event, and it only happened online. Correct? Do you know happen to know anything about what happened with PAX East?
I don't. I can't. When PAX East is usually it's early March, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I imagine they did not happen. I didn't actually pay attention to that, so I guess we won't talk about it if we don't know what we're talking about here. But
I didn't pay attention at all this year to PAX.
The other item is then the esports teams. So you've got big teams making big money, and guess what? They're still able to do so even in an environment where most of the world is being hit by a pandemic. So in a lot of ways, they're able to adapt. They're still able to play events with their team from their isolated locations and transmit, you know, they play online, so you can just have the hosts and the recordings be somewhere else. And it's it adds a little bit of logistics and it takes away a little bit from like the production because they've been doing big set pieces and grabbing you. And for the bigger events, even been doing it in like places with audiences, with huge audiences actually. And you can't do that here, but it doesn't matter because esports started with an online viewership, and so it can still just hit on that as its main go-to. So esports has done really, really well. I want to change gears for a second here, Russ. So obviously this is great. I mean, there's more discussion going on. Gaming's really exciting right now, mostly because a lot more people are paying attention to it.
Yep.
But also there's just happens to be a lot of cool, interesting things going on this year. What does this mean for content creators? Like, obviously the conversation increasing around gaming is good. This means more exposure, potentially for you as a gaming creator. But how, what does this mean for us, and how can we leverage this maybe?
Well, I was actually going to ask you for almost the same thing. I was going to ask you, as someone who's streaming mobile gaming, how does going and looking at these studies that show, I'm assuming some of these games that are in here, I've honestly never even heard of. How does this affect your strategy as a streamer, looking, and being able to see what the top most discussed games on Twitter actually are? I think for the big picture, to answer your question, it gets you into being part of the conversation, and being able to actually show some knowledge about this stuff, depending on what you're doing. It's valuable. It can guide you in the right. It may not guide you in the right direction now, but there may be a point where something comes up and you're like, okay, well, I remember seeing this and this. And because you're more educated on the topic, you can easily flow into a new strategy if needed to. But yeah, to ask you as a streamer of a mobile game, going through here and seeing this ridiculous amount of mobile games that are the most tweeted about games globally, how does that affect your strategy?
Yeah, I think so. My Twitter game is super weak, which is also why I asked you first. And I need to definitely do a better job with my Twitter game. I started out being in social media, really focusing on Twitter, and then I've kind of done this full story where I haven't really been focusing on it lately. But when I look at it right now, there's kind of this moving and shaking in the creator side where it's more about relevancy. And Twitter is the platform to make yourself relevant because you can insert yourself into the big conversations, the ones that have been happening, the past quarter or two, the console wars, what's going on with Dr. Disrespect, the different, the cleansing of the industry and abuse towards women. All these different topics are places for your brand to take a stand, to make a name for yourself by taking a position, and inserting yourself into the conversation. The relevancy is so important. I'm going to use Ninja as an example. So Ninja is relevant, right? So because Ninja is relevant, he actually doesn't need to create. Interestingly, he doesn't need to stream to make money. He just streams if you notice right now, he's only done like 2 streams in the past like 2-3 months or so, ever since the whole Mixer Fallout thing. Because that gave him so much press and so much money afterwards, he can ride that out because he's relevant. Right now, he can basically do whatever he wants as long as he stays relevant. So he continues. The one thing he has been doing is he's been talking on Twitter and posting on Twitter and jumping into conversations. This is keeping him relevant. He can actually do this instead of streaming and still make money because he still has this huge audience who's ready to go whenever he does do content. They're ready to go to whatever stream he goes to. They're ready to go to whatever platform he wants, except probably Facebook Gaming. So it's coming down to if you have enough success, you supersede the need for the platforms and you kind of become your own celebrity. And Twitter is a good place to maintain your celebrityness, I guess is the way I look at it, by staying in the conversation. And that's the benefit of it. That's the benefit of, there's a lot of value to being relevant and to being in the conversation. It gets you a lot of attention. People are interested in what you're going to do. It brings you up and elevates you to a status. If Ninja were to just be like radio silent for months, actually he'd probably still be okay, but he probably would be not quite as okay as if he had kept up the conversation on Twitter. So because he's taking stances on Twitter, he's sharing his opinions and he's active there, that's kind of keeping his like audience primed and interested in him. Once they lose interested in him, game over. So that's the lesson I would say for other creators that I would need to take is if I want to be able to expand my horizons, expand my audience, I need to become a little bit more relevant in what's going on in the gaming industry. Maybe by starting out small, maybe by being relevant in like the small niche you're in, maybe like the one game that's like your cornerstone that you're really kind of focusing yourself on. Become relevant there first and expand out. You can't become ninja right away, obviously. I don't know. Ross, you're good at growing on Twitter. You're good at making, and you run a gaming account. You know, does that make any sense? Does relevancy matter at all in terms of growth or as a creator?
I think more so just as a creator. I think as a creator, no matter where you're streaming on, I think it's important to have Twitter, and I think it's important to be part of the conversation. Twitter, essentially, looking at if as a streamer, and obviously nobody's really streaming on Twitter. Like I don't even think we really recommend that anymore. But as a streamer on any other platform, having Twitter as kind of a peek behind the curtain. That's the strategy that I tend to look at it. Give people a peek behind the curtain about, you know, your opinions on gaming, what's going on in the industry. Twitter, you know, when you're doing your live streaming, you have to really just kind of focus on playing the game at hand. But when you're on Twitter, it gives you a chance to kind of reach out a little bit, kind of expand your horizons and talk about things in the gaming industry that excite you. And it's a great way to then connect on more interest levels with your followers that watch you stream. And that's why I think it's important to, you know, talk about Twitter when you're streaming, even if it's just for a minute or so. Be like, hey, I'm over here on Twitter talking about this, guys. Would love you to come be part of the conversation, such and so forth. But yeah, essentially Twitter is it's really difficult to grow on Twitter now. So looking at Twitter as a growth opportunity is it's not going to get you very far. I don't recommend doing that. But like I said, I recommend this being a place to have a conversation with your fans, with your followers. It's a place. It's another avenue to earn more trust from your audience, and it's another avenue to relate to them on a different level outside of the game that you're streaming. It's necessary. I'm trying to think of something to describe it, like a metaphor to use, but I really don't think there necessarily is one. It would essentially be like us, like we work in gaming marketing, but at the same time we do this podcast. This podcast is like our Twitter. It's our opportunity to reach new people and reach people on things that are still industry standard, things that you're still going to have to work on in the industry, but it's still different from our main course there. So I think Twitter is important for the most part, just for keeping the conversation going and just for giving your audience another reason to talk to you.
Okay, I want to switch. That was good. Let's switch gears here for a second, and I'm gonna move me down here. What do you think about this rumor of Twitter buying TikTok? Because you mentioned here that, you know, streaming video content on Twitter, which is actually Periscope, doesn't really work. I know we kind of started this podcast on Periscope and that kind of worked, but this is a little bit different. If you're doing gaming specific content, especially longer form gaming content, it doesn't work on Twitter. And we know that Twitter has been wanting to make some moves away from Periscope. Periscope is basically like this dead, like streaming platform that they had to buy just to have streaming, but they want something better. What is the legitimacy of this rumor of Twitter's interest in buying TikTok or like combining in some way? Like, how would that even work? I don't even know. Like,
it would have to be a situation kind of like, and by the way, I don't know either, but I'm assuming it would have to be a situation kind of like what they did with Vine. I think everybody remembers Vine. Everybody liked Vine. I thought it was actually doing pretty well when Twitter decided to close it down. I'm not still kind of confused as to why they did that. But as the TikTok, you know, I would be interested to see where they're going with it, but there are definitely a lot of concerns. I think this could, depending on how they intertwine the two, this could actually hurt Twitter a little bit. Twitter's net worth is only like $30 billion, and TikTok is worth It's over 10 billion. It's worth a shit ton of money. So if Twitter is going to go all in and give up, what, half of their worth to acquire TikTok, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if this is the best move, but however, it may be TikTok's only move, because if they're going to stay in the U.S. market, what, they've got like 40 days now to actually find a legitimate U.S. partner. And I haven't heard any word of Microsoft was rumored for a long time to be in the running to buy them, but I haven't heard anything about this. They've confirmed, Twitter and TikTok. Well, they haven't confirmed. They've both no commented when been asked about if they've had discussions. But I think it would be huge for creators if it was done right. I think we can all agree on that. But my concern is, knowing what we know about Twitter, is it going to be done right? And I don't.
Having
been
watching these guys do Twitter business for what, 10 or more years now, like this just isn't happening. This is not happening. It's just a rumor, possibly just to make the stocks rise. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense on the outside, right? Like, Twitter's short form content, TikTok's short form video content. You put the two together, yay, makes logical sense, right? But Twitter isn't going to make a big business move like this because they've barely been able to be profitable pretty much ever in the history of their company until like a little bit recently, and only a little bit. So for them to blow money they don't necessarily really even have, or like half of it on TikTok, is like a huge risk that I don't think they need. They need some better video, especially live video platform combination other than Periscope. And I'm sure they've been looking at options, but I don't think that this is the answer realistically. And I don't think TikTok would be agreeable to this anyway. You're talking about, also consider the target audiences. You're talking about taking TikTok, which is the Gen Z, younger kids, and combining it with like the boomers text platform. The kids are gonna hate it. Like, they're gonna completely just abandon TikTok if they do this, and I'm sure TikTok knows that. So yeah, I don't really see this happening at all. Twitter does need a solution though for live video.
They do.
It's way too long. It's taken far too long. Periscope is not good enough, and they haven't done anything with Periscope, and they're not going to. They need to have some sort of solution, and they need to create it themselves, realistically. They need to build out their platform's features, and they need to actually take the time to do it themselves instead of trying to shortcut and buy another video platform. Because how has that worked out for them in the past? It hasn't, right? Vine, Periscope, no. Everything fails, so they need to make it themselves.
I agree. If anything happens with this, if there is some kind of Twitter or TikTok crossover event of the year, I think it's going to be very similar to what the Facebook and Instagram collaboration is. I think they're both going to be individually their own apps. I don't think there's going to be much combo between them. I don't think we're going to see tweets on TikTok's timeline, or a lot of, they would definitely open up, I think, on Twitter's timeline where you can embed TikTok videos. But outside of that, I think they're going to be their own thing. I think on the TikTok app, there would maybe be, do you want to post this to Twitter as well? And I think that would probably be the most of it. And if that's the case, then maybe that could work. Maybe just getting TikTok videos into Twitter's feed, being able to embed those into Twitter's feed, would see a huge skyrocket of engagement for people who are on Twitter but really don't have that much interest in TikTok. So if there are angles that this could work, but I think at the end of the day, like you said, we can't trust Twitter to make this move. We can't trust them to get it right. They haven't gotten anything. They very rarely do they get anything right. I mean,
they're 0 for 2 in terms of acquisitions, right? So it's not looking good.
It's very fair for us to be skeptical. The more I think about it, the more I can see a situation where it works. But I don't know. Number one, I don't think it's going to happen, just because I don't think Twitter is going to put out that kind of money. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them right now. But obviously, I would like to see this happen. I think creators would like to see this happen, especially TikTok creators. You guys are being able to add a different platform to your repertoire, even if it is just Twitter, even if the growth is hard on there, it's still valuable in some sense. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think if anything's going to happen, it's going to end up being Microsoft.
Yeah. All right. So if we go down the Microsoft TikTok discussion, that is a discussion for another episode and another day. Hopefully, you guys found this conversation worthwhile. Gaming on Twitter is at a huge increase, and I want to end maybe with this quote real quick. Right here, with over 1 billion tweets sent in the first half of 2020, the gaming conversation on Twitter is at an all-time high. So gaming has never been more relevant, and gaming has never been more conversed about during this time whatsoever. So it is a great time to be a gaming creator. Make the most of it. Make the best of it. Ross, can you take us out of here?
Yeah, let's get on out of here. That was your daily drop. Full replays. Head on over to YouTube. Give that a watch if you want to see us again, or if you missed some important detail. However, talking Twitter and TikTok, I don't know how much important detail there's going to be because it's just a rumor right now. Fingers crossed. Subscribe to the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, iHeartRadio, every podcasting platform out there. We will be back tomorrow. Happy creating.